Hi there, welcome to my channel. Today we are working on a Knitmaster Mod 100. Here is a pattern that I'll be working on today. It's basically a faire-isle pattern, but what's different from the other faire-isle pattern I did was that this works on single rows. That means each row is different and the rows need to be worked in a way that I can use the needle selector. Here I had to change the needle selector. For the faire-isle, the booklet was saying that you use C, but I thought I would change it because I wanted to use the needle selector in a different way, but still do the faire-isle knitting. As you can see, every row is different, and I had to use a single yarn or a single color per row. Here you reposition the carriage levers. Here is the first row of patterning that I used with the needle selector. Make sure that the last needle is brought up so that the loop or the float can be knitted in. Knit your first row. You then change the color of the yarn because you'll be using the second yarn to create the patterning. Basically what happens is you are actually knitting two rows on one row, and you need to knit the two rows so you can use the two colors. The first row of patterning is in the same color. Select your needles to create the pattern. Select the alternative needles so you can do your second row in the second color. Now that you've done your two rows in a single row of patterning, you now look at the next row. Every row that you'll be doing will actually be two rows. So instead of one row, you're actually doing two rows, except that you're actually doing one row of patterning. Here I am actually doing a third row. This is the second row of patterning that I'll be doing. As you can see on your right hand side, there's two yarns, and basically you choose your next color that is from the actual right. Basically what I've done is I use two yarns on either side of the machine, so when you're knitting, it makes it much easier to do the patterning. It's a little bit of a slow process as it's a little bit tricky to do the patterning, but as you practice it gets a little bit easier. When you're working the rows, your first row will basically be the yarn color, the first yarn color that you'll be having, which will be on the right hand side and which you will be knitting from right to left. Then you pick up the second color, which will be from left to right. But now what happens with the second color is that you've got to knit it again. That means you don't take the carriage off, you basically knit that yarn into the second row that you're doing. So you've done the first row, but then the second row you'll probably be using the same color twice on basically 2 rows. But when you move the carriage over to the left hand side, you swap the yarns again, and then that's how you knit your row. Basically for like for 1 row it's two rows, and for 2 rows it's 4 rows, and this is how you build up your knitting. Here I'm actually doing the 4th row. You have to determine what yarn is on your carriage. Sometimes you got to use the same yarn twice, so that you can pick up the yarn on the other side, and you actually might have to work 2 rows in that way. It's just a way of forming the pattern and to make it easier for you to knit. Here what I'm basically doing is I'm doing a knitted row in one color, and this will be from basically from right to left. And what will happen is when I get to the other side, I will be exchanging the actual yarns or changing the color. Here I am changing the color so that I can finish off this row. Here the same color is on the carriage on the right hand side. I'll be using that same color again so I can exchange the yarn on the left hand side. here I'm going into the next row of patterning, which is basically 2 rows that you'll be doing with the carriage. I'm still using the same yarn, so if your second yarn was, for instance here, the green yarn, the second row that you'll be doing will start off with the green yarn again. This is basically how you do your patterning, and this is how you need to get your yarn to the other side so you can exchange it for the next yarn. I can highly recommend that you put 1 yarn on the left and 1 yarn on the right when you do your patterning. So when you do your first row, make sure that your second yarn that you exchange is on the other side of the actual needle bed of patterning that you're working on. It actually works much easier. It's a little bit tricky to do the count. What I also did was use the row counter. So for this patterning, it had 8 rows of patterning, so it worked out to 16 rows of actually using the carriage in order to create the pattern. Here is a knitting tip. Make sure that you bring the edge needle up. This will prevent holes from forming in the patterning. Here's the actual finished patterning. I must have done about 3 or 4 samples before I got it like this. It was just about the row count that I needed to work on, and just to get it even. I was quite surprised how even the pattern was. I thought maybe the tension may not have been correct, but it actually looks exactly the same as what it is in the booklet. It was really quite interesting to see a really old pattern that probably hasn't been used on this machine for like maybe a number of years, and I just thought it was really interesting to do. Would I use this pattern again? Yes, I would use it because it's actually a really nice pattern. It's just a little bit tricky on the count, and you know, I did make a lot of mistakes, and I did notice that you really got to be spot on your count. And I just want to say thank you for watching. I hope this was something useful you can use. I'm not sure what project I'm going to do next. I'm probably going to do one of the other faire-isle patterns just to see how it works. I want to say thank you to all my subscribers. Thank you for watching my videos, and I will see you soon in the next video.